Hi, this is a lesson on the program we're going to be using to write code this semester. The program is called PyCharm. I will be using PyCharm Professional for this lesson on Windows. You should be using PyCharm Community, unless you have a way to get Professional, which I don't recommend using it illegally. The PyCharm Community version is really good, and I highly recommend it. So this is when you first open the program, you're going to get a screen like this. You probably won't have as many options, and you definitely won't have projects already created. That's fine. We're going to create a new project. And a project is, what this is actually doing is it's just creating a file full of our code. It's just creating a folder with our code in it. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating one of these whenever we start a whole new concept. So you'll notice throughout the rest of these videos, they're all going to be in the same project. And that's just because we don't really need to create different projects if the code is all related to the same basic thing. So in this case, our code is all related to just learning Python and giving some basic examples. Maybe later on when we get to more advanced topics, it'll change, but for now we're sticking to the basics, and so I won't actually be changing a project for everything. The first thing we do is we have to set up it might look like this when you start. You're going to want to extend it. We have to set location of the project, so I'm going to browse, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to put it in my projects folder and call it, oops, you can't see that, putting it in my projects folder and just call it Python 101. Okay. Give that a moment. Oh, sorry. Put this into projects. The folder has to exist. So we select the projects folder, and then we create the and then I go over here and I say Python 101, and that is going to create a new project folder. We're going to leave everything else as is. So if you don't have an interpreter, available, you just look down over here and you'd find one. You want to use a new environment, you want to use virtual env, you can use Conda or something else, but I recommend using virtual env. If that doesn't work, then try pipenv or try poetry. Still, like I said, I recommend virtual env. Don't really worry too much about what these options are. They're a more advanced topic. We're not really going to have to worry about that or cover that. We're going to inherit global state packages. We're not going to make available to all projects, and we're not going to create a custom script. We're not going to create a basic script. We're just going to create our project. And now this is PyCharm. PyCharm is going to open up. It's going to create a virtual environment. Don't worry too much about what that means. And then it's going to open up and it's going to look something like this. You'll notice in the bottom right over here, stuff is happening. That is just the project getting set up and getting things up and running. The rest of it, though, is we've got venv, which is just, we never open this. Python, in order to run, uses a lot of its own programs and a lot of its own background code that we don't need to see, and so that stuff sits over there. We don't ever have to open that. What we do is we're going to create a new Python file. And this is just going to be, we'll call this main, or we'll call this lesson 0. So this is just going to be our lesson 0. This is a very basic file. It's going to be empty, and it's just to show you how to run Python code. Don't worry about what this code does. We are going to cover it this is covered in later videos. This is more about using PyCharm. So I ran the file, I pressed Control S or Command S on a Mac to save the file. Then I right click and I click run. And just like that, the code shows up here and it actually runs. This is saying, hey, it's running, it's using Python at this folder location to run this file, which is currently project/python101/lesson0.py, and it just prints out main, which is the word I did, and then it finishes. So PyCharm is a really cool program. It does a lot of it built in. Now you'll notice over here, now that I've run it once, I have this configuration over here. So I can actually run it again without having to right click. I can just click the little plus button in this top right corner and it'll run. The nice thing about PyCharm, though, or one of the big things about PyCharm, is it has all this stuff built in. So this folder actually exists on my computer, right? This folder that we're inside of, if I go to my D drive and I go to my projects, I have a project here called Python 101, and right there, this is the same lesson 0 folder, file that's over there. If I delete it here, it'll get deleted. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's what would happen. This is open. This is just showing me a place in my computer where the stuff is. We can run code from inside here, and it shows us the end result. If this pops up for you, just say allow access. And this shows the end result. We can also do debugging and related things to that, which we'll talk about debugging in a separate lesson. We can debug, we can do other fun things. So that's the basics. The basics is, this is the program. This is where all my files are located, right? This is where PyCharm shows me the files in my computer. This little thing on the bottom is running. If I needed to open a terminal, which is if I need to like use the command line for some reason, I'd click the little terminal window over here in PyCharm and that would show up. If there's something wrong with my code, stuff would show up over here. For example, now it's saying there's no new line at the end of the file. Now that it's there, that problem immediately goes away because PyCharm is actively monitoring my program. PyCharm, in a nutshell, is the program we use to write code. And those are just a few of the basic features. There's a lot more to it, and we're going to discuss a lot more, and a lot more will come up. But the core idea is just some basics of PyCharm. You can also look up a PyCharm cheat sheet if you wanted to see some of the hotkeys that I'll be using. I will try to mention them when I use them. As things go on, in order to get PyCharm running, you need to install PyCharm, and you need to install Python itself. Those links are going to be in the description of this video. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know and I will answer them.